Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Thanks for clicking on the video. So much is happening in the world of MMA right now. I could sit here and talk to you guys for hours. Dana White came out and announced a shit ton of fights. One of them being Alex Pereira versus Jiří Procházka, who's coming out of his long layoff from his injury, right? He never lost the belt. We forget that, right? He gave that thing up when he hurt his shoulder. And here he is coming back to fight Alex Pereira. And this matchup is just 10 out of 10. These guys are going to go for the kill from the first bell to the last if they get to see that last bell. Man, I actually don't know who I'd lean towards more, to be honest, as to who I think might win, because I think on paper we can all agree, technically speaking, Alex Pereira is a far better striker. But Jiří Procházka's awkwardness in his striking is very effective, right? So it's like, which do you consider more valuable on paper anyway, right? The technical prowess of Pereira or the effectiveness of Procházka's awkwardness? And just in terms of the character, right? Like, I love how Procházka leans into the whole samurai thing. He looks like he's from like the straight up like Edo period. You know what I'm talking, like the 1600s in Japan. And Alex Pereira being from his indigenous tribe, I just really hope they both lean into that coming into this fight. Like, the face-off is going to be badass. Like, I just envision Pereira, you know, looking fucking terrifying, like an Aztec warrior with the whole face paint and the big head get up with like, it'd be cool if Jiří came in with like some kind of like kimono. Maybe he's got like a what's it, a kimura? No, what are those swords? A katana. Yeah, like if Jiří came in with a katana, dear God, that would be the most badass shit in the world, like for the weigh-ins. I hope to God something like that happens. But yeah, I don't know who I'm leaning more towards in that fight. I think because of the layoff that Jiří's just had, like, there was a real serious injury he sustained to his shoulder. So I think I'd have to lean more towards Pereira, who's been super active since he came into the UFC, right? The guy, I think he's 36 years old, which is, I mean, that's fucking unprecedented, right? For a guy to come into the UFC so late and do so well. I'm pretty sure he's still got less than 10 fights. Maybe he's got like 11 or 12 fights at most, right? But for him to be doing what he's doing right now with such little fights is incredible. You know what I mean? And he, in a lot of ways, he has Israel to thank for that, because if Israel wasn't champ, he would have had a much tougher road to the championship. But because he was able to get there so soon and establish himself in the sport, everyone now considers him to be one of the best, and so he gets these opportunities in a way far easier than what a lot of guys would have with a lesser name value. So yeah, that's a fight I can't wait for. I believe that's the co-main event of the November MSG card with John Jones. That card can just take all my money, because that is going to be an incredible event. I mean, John Jones versus Stipe, I'm actually less excited for that than I am for Pereira Procházka, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like Stipe, there's a chance he's past it. I mean, to think we haven't seen him fight since he lost his belt to Ngannou, that seems like a fucking lifetime ago now. But moving on to another fight that Dana White announced, Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards in December. Like, geez, I hope to God Leon can pull this off. Colby hasn't fought in, I mean, it might have been over 2 years by the time they actually get in the cage to face each other. I have no idea what Colby's done to like get in such good favor with the UFC for them to just grant him all of these opportunities all the time. I mean, I saw like a comparison of Colby's last 5 opponents and Belal Muhammad's last 5 opponents, who is arguably far more deserving of this title shot. And it's insane. Like, you know, Belal's last 5, he's got like Gilbert Burns, Wonderboy Thompson, like guys who are legitimate contenders still to this day. And then you look at Colby's last 5 opponents who he's beaten, the majority of them, maybe even all of them, aren't even ranked in the UFC anymore, or even competing at all. You know, we're talking like wins over Masvidal, Tyron Woodley. It's like, how is this guy getting this title shot? But don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to it, because Colby, he's a guy who, despite not being in the cage, you can guarantee, you can bet your last buck that he's been in the training room all day, every day, improving. And if Leon's got a weakness, I think you can say it will be his wrestling, right? Although he did show great takedown defense against Usman, I just think, man, he's really up against it here in terms of a Colby matchup. But I do think he can pull it off. I really do, even though he's been inactive too, like since he won the belt. When was that? I mean, he probably defended his belt against Usman like almost a year ago now, right? Maybe I'm tripping. It just, especially by the time they fight, Colby and Leon, it would have been a while since Leon last fought. So they'll be on a similar pegging, honestly. I'm trying to think about who I would lean more towards in that fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Colby got the upset. I'm not sure who would even be the favourite. I think Leon would be the favourite coming off of those matchups against Usman. But yeah, that's a real tough one to predict. I have no idea. I could see Colby like really wearing on Leon, but Leon landing a few big shots throughout the fight that may make it harder for Colby to push forward. I can't even predict that fight. I'm just going to come out and say I hope Leon wins. Just as a British guy, I love Leon. I love everything he's been doing lately. So let's just hope to God that he can pull off a win. I don't see either of them finishing each other. I will say that. I think it will go to decision. I mean, other fights that have been announced that are worth discussing. Wonderboy Thompson being thrown to the wolves against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, dear God, this almost seems like it's a punishment for Wonderboy, right? I understand that if he wins this fight, he's absolutely back in title contention. No and ifs or buts, but man, Shavkat is a scary, scary dude and not a great matchup for Wonderboy, right? I'll grant that most of the guys in the top 5, top 10 aren't great matchups for Wonderboy, but geez, this just seems real tough. And like I said, it feels like a punishment for Wonderboy because he didn't take that short notice fight against Ian Gary. But I mean, why would he have taken that matchup on short notice? I think they gave him, obviously he was meant to fight Michel Pereira, who missed weight by like 3 or 4 pounds if I remember correctly. And they expected him to fight Ian Gary 3 weeks later, who's like this rising young stud. You know what I mean? On 3 weeks notice, it seems unfair. Granted, those are similar matchups in the sense that I believe both of those fights would have taken place on the feet, but Ian Gary is he's a different animal compared to Michel Pereira. You know what I mean? And that just sucks because Wonderboy's been around forever. He's renowned for being like the nicest motherfucker in the game, right? And so for them to do him like that just seems harsh. And he's done a lot for the UFC, you know what I mean? He's fought for the belt numerous times against Woodley. And it just seems as though he should have garnered enough favour in the UFC over the years for them to have been treating him better than what he's been getting treated right now. I kind of feel bad for him in a way, but who knows? Whenever there's a striker as good as Wonderboy, he's always capable of winning. He can always catch anyone, so it sounds like I'm writing him off, which I kind of am, but let's not forget, a striker as elite as Wonderboy is, he can pull off the W, but I really think Rakhmonov will win that in a decision. Rather, maybe not dominantly, but clearly, you know what I mean? It'll be a unanimous decision, I think. Another fight which just really ruined my day, to be honest. It's a great matchup in a lot of ways, but Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. As someone who loves Tony Ferguson and really kind of despises Paddy Pimblett, this matchup kind of kills me inside because, well, firstly, to be fair, the fact that they've even made this matchup says to me that the UFC think this is a good fight, right? And that kind of shows me that they don't think too highly of Paddy Pimblett's skill set, right? Because Tony Ferguson has looked like a fucking shadow of his former self nowadays, right? He's on like a 5-fight losing streak. He just got done getting submitted by Bobby Green. He just looks like a ghost of who he was before. And for them to match him against Paddy, who is, in their opinion, a superstar, right? Someone who can potentially sell a lot of pay-per-views down the road. That tells me they think Paddy can win this fight. But also, it's going to be a competitive matchup, which is so crazy because of how bad Tony has looked. But Paddy has not looked great himself either, right? I grant that he has had some finishes, but his last performance in particular against Jared Gordon was borderline embarrassing, right? Not because Jared Gordon is terrible, but because, I don't know, we know where Jared Gordon stands in terms of the elite of the division, right? Like, he's not of that caliber whatsoever, and he made that fight really competitive, and I thought he won against Paddy. I understand that Paddy had an injured ankle, I think, right? That's why he's been off this whole time. I'd imagine as well, if Paddy's been injured, he already likes to eat when he's perfectly healthy. So if he's injured and not being able to train like he wants to, I'd imagine he's been really bad in terms of the shape he's been in since we last saw him. So how hard has he been training over this last year and a half? I don't know. I hope to God that Tony Ferguson can pull this off and retire with a win. I don't think he would retire if he wins, but I would hate to see Tony Ferguson's last fight with the UFC be like a loss against Paddy. I truly believe Tony Ferguson, El Kukui, deserves to be treated better than that, right? He deserves more than to go out on a loss to Paddy Pimblett, right? The guy's done so much for the UFC. He was on like the longest win streak ever in the lightweight division, if I remember rightly. Like, I think it was like a 12-fight win streak. And it wasn't like a lifetime ago either, you know what I mean? It was like 2019 that he took that L, 2020 perhaps. So a lot has changed over the last few years for the guy, and I really just think as a beloved character like he is in this sport, would be great to see him go out on a W. If I had to predict the fight, man, it kills me to say this, I can see Paddy finishing Tony, honestly. You know, he's younger, he's hungrier, he is powerful in his punches in all fairness, and lately Tony Ferguson, I mean, he was always there to be hit, but lately his ability to take punishment has really dwindled, and I just think, it really kills me to say this because I really don't like Paddy. I hate his attitude towards fighting. I hate, you know, the way he talks to the media. Like, if he's dared to be questioned, he gets like offended, and that really bugs me, it irks me. And so, like I said, it kind of kills me to say this, but yeah, I can see Paddy finishing Tony. Not to say Tony can't finish Paddy. It wouldn't surprise me if Tony was able to, like, I don't know, pull off some kind of wacky submission, but I can see Paddy landing big clean shots with his chin in the air, because Tony can't capitalize on that nowadays, and putting Tony down. And like I've said 1,000 times, it really hurts my soul to say that out loud, but that's how I can see it going down, unfortunately. For now though, guys, that brings us to the end of the show. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content just like this. Also, if you have any thoughts or opinions on any of these matchups or any of the other ones that were announced, please leave a comment down below, and I'd love to get back to you when I have the time. Thanks, guys.